the challenge with aflatoxin is that it changes more rapidly than linear growth changes. So the time dynamics are a challenge because you measure growth as an outcome which takes years to kind of come to an observable effect. Whereas aflatoxin in the blood, when you measure it, it relates to exposure over the last 3 to 4 months. So there might have been an impact, and then by the time we observed, it was gone in the blood because maybe the natural exposure levels were, the background noise or the background exposure was lower. So that's what we think is going on.
So can you tell us just about a little bit the result concerning your first experimentation in the 10 countries? Okay. The second question is about the third presentation. When you were presented your results, I saw on the diapositive that peri-harvest contamination on groundnut was a little bit different in comparison with the remaining vegetables. I don't know if you have an explanation about this. I just want to understand. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. My questions goes to Godfrey. And in your presentation, you mentioned that aflatoxin contamination do affect livestock, especially poultry. So my question is, if this affects poultry and it leads to stunting and poor growth, and these products are actually sold, are they safe for human consumption? Thank you.
Just a quick question for Alejandro. I noted that the price you said for AflaSafe is $19 per hectare. I looked up the price in Tamale here in Ghana for maize, where they get about 1 ton per hectare, and it roughly is $220 of revenue. So I'm just curious as where are you getting this income increase? Is it from increased yields, or do you really project this big increase in a return to AflaSafe or safe from aflatoxin maize? Thank you.
Okay, I have a question for Godfrey. I noticed that you had larger females in your respondents compared to the male. Why is this so? And how did you explain the concept of food contamination to the respondents in the local language? Because it is obvious they do not understand what aflatoxin means naturally, because it's not something you can see physically and say, okay, this is aflatoxin. It's not visible to the eyes. And then to Sylvia, is there the research capacity in terms of food, with regards to food safety in Africa from your study? Because I didn't see much on that in your presentation.
Okay, so let me answer the first question. When we develop an AflaSafe product, we monitor thousands of isolates. We basically take samples from all the major agricultural areas in a country. We isolate the strains associated with those crops, and then we select those ones that have different abilities, different crop adaptation, different or superior competition ability to decrease aflatoxin content. So we look at the genetic diversity of those toxigenic strains. So it's not that we select the strains just the first one that we encounter. No, this is a very rigorous process, and we examine thousands of isolates in each country. For the second question, in Nigeria, farmers are increasing their yields because they also receive training in agricultural practices, they receive inputs. So AflaSafe is not going to result in an increase of yield, but they receive training in other technologies that results in increased yield. Now they obtain higher or premium prices because there are industries looking for aflatoxin safe maize, and they are willing to pay premium prices for those safe crops. Now, For every dollar that a farmer spends in Nigeria, in average, they obtain, in AflaSafe products, they obtain $5. So it makes sense. They obtain high premium prices for that maize.
So the project didn't really look at measuring what is the capacity, the food safety capacity in Africa. It was about what are the projects that are investing on capacity building, investing on, pretty much. And so what I can say is that there is not much investment on food safety research, like on building the capacity to the food safety research right now. And again, as I said during the presentation, we looked at international projects, well, projects funded by international organizations or international companies. And I do know that there's more and more interest by national governments to work on food safety. And I do think that they are trying to promote research on food safety in their own countries, but the resources are normally limited. So that is an area that could really be expanded when it comes to investment from international donors.
The first question was asking about that there was, the graph showed that there is much contamination in the groundnut. So this is what we expected as I presented, that much of the contamination occurs, that groundnuts and the maize are the main susceptible grains to aflatoxin contamination. So this was expected that we got 350 microgram per kilogram contamination in groundnut, stored groundnut, which is more than 20 times the maximum limit. So this is what we could have expected because of the susceptibility of these grains to aflatoxin contamination. The other question was asking about that aflatoxin can affect animals, the poultry. So when the poultry consume the grains that are contaminated with aflatoxins, then they are also affected by affecting their performance, the growth rate, and the weight gain. And is asking that whether this can have an effect in humans. Yeah, we know that just a little residues can be transmitted into animal tissues, which may have not any significance to the human health from. So we get much of the contamination in human from the consumption of the grains, particularly maize and the groundnuts, rather than consuming these aflatoxin residues in animal tissues. So the other was asking about that we included the women and the men in this project. So this study was part of the project, a larger project, and most of this project tend to include gender components. So that's why we also ask women to balance, to get opinions from both men and women.
Okay, thank you.